Thanks for the insight from all your different perspectives. But another aspect of choosing industry over graduate school that we want to ask you was the financial investment of a PhD program and its return on investment compared to a BS or just a regular MSE degree here. When we think about the associated opportunity cost of the time it takes to go to grad school, I know you did a lot of research into this. So could you summarize the findings that you found from that, and overall, like what are the pros and cons from a financial aspect of going to grad school?
Yeah, so let's consider two cases. Let's assume that somebody they already have a bachelor's degree in material science and engineering, and they're considering either getting a master's degree right after the bachelor's degree, such as through like a BSMS program, which would take 1 or 2 years, or getting the PhD right after the bachelor's degree, right, which would take potentially 5 or 6. And so if you look at the salaries coming out at each degree level, I mean, the bachelor's degree is already going to pay quite well. The master's degree will pay better than that, and then the PhD will pay the highest of those three, right? And again, just on average, you can find, depending on industry or qualifications, variations from that. But because the PhD takes so long, because it takes 5 or 6 years, and because the United States, the stipend he receives quite low compared to industry pay, over the course of a career, somebody who got a PhD would likely end up making less or having a lower wealth at the end of their career if they're investing a certain percentage of their income compared to the person with a master's degree. And the critical thing is, the person who graduates the master's degree and then works in industry for 3 years has that 3 or 4 years of income at the start of their career, percentage of which they presumably would invest for retirement. And so it comes out at the end such that if both people retire at the same time, that the person with a master's degree would have more money. But I think that this to me was really fascinating because it seems like a paradoxical result, right? But I don't know if it should be used or weighted heavily when someone's trying to make a decision, because any STEM degree or any STEM type career will, sooner or later provide financial security. And if a PhD is a much better fit and the low pay during the PhD isn't a problem, then there's no reason to not go for it. But I guess it is worth considering, even just more broadly. If someone is, it's like if you're trying to just make money, right, through your career so you can retire early, there are more effective ways to do it than, deciding between the master's, PhD in material science, right? You can get a CS degree and then try to work at Facebook or Google and, invest almost everything that you make, including the stock options and such that you get, and then use that to retire really early.
I think that the financial aspect is very important, but another thing that I personally considered a lot going through was what was my dream job after I graduated. And so even though that seems correct, like you would make more money over the lifetime, certain levels of jobs require certain levels of education. And so like if I want to do any R&D, it would look like I would need a master's. So I would also include that, yes, you can make more, but if there's something you really want to do, make sure that the level of education you have is equivalent to what you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So maybe just talking to people who are in companies or positions of interest and seeing what's needed from a degree standpoint, that could maybe dictate or help in making your decision as well, versus bachelor's, master's, and PhD. That's a really good point. But while we're on the topic of finances, this one's for you, Lily. What should an MSE student consider when it comes to like financial aid, scholarships, stipends, grants, and just general cost of living that may not be readily apparent on the internet when you're attending grad school, since the stipends might be lower than traditional engineering job right out of college?
Yeah, so I can say David and I are both living in the Bay Area, and he probably makes about 3 times as much as I do. That's a perspective based on other people I've talked to who came with a BS to work here. That's definitely something to consider. As far as trying to think about important parts of finances for PhD students, that's what I can talk about more than master's finances because I am a PhD student. So one quick thing is, don't forget to budget for health insurance and taxes, especially remembering that depending on which state you're in, the taxes will change. So I moved from Tennessee with no income tax to California, which does have income tax.
To say the least, yeah.
Yeah. Another thing to think about is, so for a lot of students, the funding that you get will come directly from the school or the professor you're working with. And this is a really good reason to apply to several schools in your grad school application process, because different schools will give you different stipends, and even the amount of stipend versus the cost of living can vary. So there are schools that can give you what seems like a lower dollar amount, but when you compare the cost of living of their city, you would actually end up being able to save more money and go ahead and start investing as a PhD student. Additionally, some schools do provide funding opportunities for master's students. Like I know Stanford allows master's students to start working some in research or as being teaching assistants as a way to recoup part of that investment. And for some schools, master's students have to pay fully out of pocket. And then as far as scholarships, so in grad school, the undergraduate equivalent scholarships is renamed fellowships. As far as I can tell, it's the same thing, it just gets a new name. There are fellowships that are specific to schools, and this is something you can kind of look up online and see, does this school have a lot of fellowship opportunities? If so, do I need to apply for them earlier than the regular application deadline, or is it a fellowship that's automatically considered with my main application? So I have a fellowship from Stanford that I did not apply for. I applied to Stanford, I got into Stanford, and Stanford said, congrats, you got this extra fellowship. So that's something when you're thinking about which schools you want to apply for, schools with larger endowments and more fellowships like that can be beneficial. There's also nationwide fellowships, and all MSE students that are US citizens should apply for these. And that's the NSF and the NDSEG. They have earlier deadlines than grad school applications, so make sure you stay on top of that. Don't wait till the last minute, but apply for those. And then the deal with those is every single person across the country gets the same amount. So NSF gives you $34,000 a year for 3 years. And $34,000 a year goes way farther for students at like the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign versus students at Stanford. So that's something to think about. If you think you have a good shot at one of those fellowships, think about, hey, if you want to be saving a lot of money, think about applying to some good schools in low cost of living areas, because there are definitely good schools that are still in low cost of living places.
Thank you for watching this segment of the It's a Material World podcast. For the full episode, hit the link in the description. We'll see you soon, and in the meantime, go change the world.